welcome back to Furthering Christendom. I'm your host, Tyler. Unfortunately, Mike can't be with us today, but we do have a special guest. James Rivera is with us, and we're going to have a bit of a different kind of podcast, a different type of talk today for our viewers. Normally, we talk about philosophy and theology, and in a sense, we're still going to do that today, but we're going to be talking about a specific philosopher, right? The great philosopher Kanye West. So, it's Toxic Yay season, I think, and let's thanks for coming on, James.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so let's talk about Donda. So, James is a like the greatest Kanye stan that I know. I strive to be as knowledgeable about Ye as James, but so I want to talk to him about primarily Donda, the album. So, but before we do that, Kanye has the Jesus is King album, right? That came out 3 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And that was kind of his first album that signified that he was becoming serious about his faith again, right? Can you tell me kind of what's the overall message of Jesus is King?
Yeah, I think that's Ye's least conceptual album. And I don't think it's because like it was rushed or anything, but I think what he wanted to do was give his fan base a snapshot of where he was, and also give the Christian community a high quality Christian album, as he seemed to put it. I know that when there's an interview with Pastor Adam Tyson, who was Ye's pastor up until at least October of 2020, because he mentions him in the Joe Rogan interview. So at least up until October of 2020, he's been Ye's pastor. And he did an interview with Apologia Radio where he was kind of giving the backstory of Ye's conversion. It's a fantastic interview if you haven't watched it, by the way. He gives like the entire details of when Ye showed up to the church, how his conversion story went, what they were doing since Ye's conversion. And he goes on to mention that Ye didn't want to rap at all. He was of the belief that rap was just devilish, which probably came from his background. I think he was more from the charismatic background, and a lot of that movement back in like the 90s viewed rap as like satanic and stuff. So I think that's why he thought it was devilish. And Pastor Adam Tyson said that his son, Pastor Adam's son, wanted Ye to make a Christian album. He thought it would be cool, and so they actually convinced Kanye to make Jesus is King. Yeah, they convinced him. He told him that all gifts and all truths are God's truth and music is God's, and why not create an album where he's glorifying God? So they're kind of responsible for Ye not retiring from music. So I think the concept behind it is not so much like Jesus or the life of Pablo, where there's like this overarching narrative, and a lot of times he takes the soldier's journey approach when he creates his track list and everything. I think it's more so him trying to touch on different themes that the average Christian can sympathize with, especially that first love feeling that Christians experience when they first come to faith in Christ. You really see that in the song God Is. So I think that's the main concept between Jesus is King. It's almost, I view it like a playlist that he made for Christians.
Very good. All right. Well, how does that compare with Donda? Is Donda a bit more conceptually sophisticated, or?
Yeah, I think so. So I think Donda, it's hard to really what really threw a wrench into a lot of the Kanye fan base's theories regarding Donda was the deluxe, because it changes the track list, which seems to almost change the narrative. But if we don't take Donda Deluxe into account, I think what Donda is, like the original track list, is touching different themes, and I think it's using double entendres throughout the album. So it's telling multiple stories in one type of timeline. But it seems to be Ye just telling us where he's been at between 2019, since he dropped Jesus is King, into the present. And like what really convinced me of that was like when you start on track 9 with Junia, it's very manic, the song. Super manic. It's kind of all over the place. And I think that song is supposed to represent a manic Ye. So I think that's like summer of 2020 Kanye West. The next song from that is Believe What I Say, which Ye dropped a snippet of in 2020 during his manic phase, when he was manic on Twitter, when he called Kim's mother Chris Jong-un and all of that. And after that, he goes into 24, which I think is when someone with I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't have any authority on this part. But when someone is bipolar, they go through a manic phase, and then they go through these like extreme lows where they feel like very depressed and stuff. And I think that's what 24 represents. So a lot of people think that between Junior, Believe What I Say, and 24, we're seeing the summer of 2020 Kanye and where he was at. 24, he goes through this depression, and then you see the song Remote Control, where he's kind of coming, to grips that he can't take control of his life the way he took to Twitter, and he thought he was going to take control of his narrative on Twitter, and he kind of takes a step back and he's like, God is in control. And that's why we see all these weird themes within Donda, where there's these dark themes here.
Mm-hmm.
There's these other unchrist-like themes where Ye's talking about, almost killing some type of foe he has, who I think at the time was Drake. And God Breathed, track 3, sets the stage for this, when Vori says, devil on my shoulder, angel on my shoulder. So I think throughout this album, that's the thing we see. We see Kanye wrestling as a Christian with the devil on his shoulder in some songs, and then the angel on his shoulders in the other songs.
How do you think Jesus is King Kanye would view Donda? What would you think of Donda?
So I think the Ye from 2019 would probably be disappointed in the Ye of 2020 and 21. And I say that because the Ye of 2019 seemed a bit more reserved and pursuing peace and, turning the other cheek, and more conservative, not politically or fiscally speaking, but more conservative, like morally speaking. Whereas what we see here is Ye, because of what he's going through in life, is backsliding a bit. Not in the apostate sense, but so I think 2019 Ye would be disappointed, and I say that to say because 2019 Ye spoke out against things that Donda Ye is doing. So like a famous scenario that happened was all of the features in the Jesus is King album. When they were in the studio with Ye, they were forced to fast, and they weren't allowed to engage in premarital sex. But now
you can say sex on here. It's okay.
Okay, gotcha. and so now you see Ye with here I go with the new chick and all this other stuff that he's currently doing. So I think if we take the Ye from 2019 at face value, because of all the things he was saying and making other artists he was collaborating with do, I think he'd be disappointed in this Ye. But he'd probably show this Ye grace because this Ye is going through it.
Going through a lot, right?
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit more into Donda, right? If you had to pick one song that represents what Donda is about, that sums up the heart of Donda, what would that be, and why do you say that?
Yeah. I think it'll definitely be Come to Life. I think in Come to Life, it's Kanye finding himself back in church. It starts with that sample. Like it feels like you're in a church setting. They're speaking in tongues, and someone seems to be like testifying. And in my head, when I listen to that song, I picture in not every denomination does this, but in the church that I grew up in, the church service, the structure, and this is most likely how it worked where Ye grew up. I grew up in a charismatic church. And they seem to follow this similar formula where, you have the church service starts off with the singing, and then there's usually a break. And then the break is when they, take on the tithes and offerings. But usually within this break, they also give an opportunity for church members to just go on the stage and give a testimony of like either a miracle that God performed in their life recently, or just just some testimony that they can give to encourage the church. So that's how I see Come to Life. I feel like it's in this break. Kanye finds himself back in church. You know, he was going through it in 2020. Maybe he wasn't going because of COVID, and he's back in church and he's going up and he's giving a testimony. He's testifying, he's speaking to the congregation, and he's letting them know, hey, this is what I've been through these past few months or these past few years. And he's just kind of pouring his heart out. And I feel like that really captures the essence of Donda, because the song starts with, I think it starts like on a minor chord of the scale, right? So if you look at music, music has a scale, right? And you can number the keys within the scale. Like if we take the key of A, right? So the key of A would have A, B, C sharp, and so forth. A would be called the one, right? Every note within the key of A is working towards the one. The one kind of resolves. It's just like it gives this happy tone. There are dissonants within the key, but they're all kind of working to reach the A. The sixth chord within the scale of A is called the minor chord. This is usually like that sad tone. A lot of sad music starts, has minor monotones. So the song starts off with this somber music in the background. There's a lot of dissonance to it. Uses a lot of what Christians used to call the devil's chord. It was like a tritone, and they didn't like it because the chord sounded a little off. You find this chord in a lot of jazz music. So a lot of Christians back then used to call it the devil's chords because they didn't like how it sounded. And it was actually a huge deal back in I think it was like the 1930s.
That's
But
hilarious.
anyway, yeah, and all that to say, it starts with this somber music. Yeah, speaking of this tension he's having with his wife, he's having internally. He's also speaking of some social issues as well. But then the song, when the piano comes in, it goes to the one chord. And that's when you kind of see the optimism come through. So I think he's telling a story in three different ways. He's telling us a story in that song through the lyrics. The lyrics is telling us, kind of giving us a summary of the entire album. The music is telling us a story by giving us that somber chord structure that then goes into the one chord, which is that happy, that resolving feeling, that optimism. And finally, he's also telling us a story by setting the stage of where his character is in the narrative. He's finding himself back in church. And I think that's where we find Kanye in 2021. He's back in church, whether it's metaphorical, whether he just means that he just finds himself trying to get better with Christ, or trying to get his life back on track, or literally he's gone back to church. I think those are the three stories that are being told and Come to Life, which we've seen him do in the past. In the Yeezus album, in the song Send It Up, he uses a sample to indicate that we're back in the club. So like the first song, it's Ye in the club. The character Yeezus is in the club. And then he goes through this entire weird drunken night. And then in Send It Up, he finds himself back in the club. After his character went through like good character development, you think the Yeezus character has become a better person. He finds himself right back in the club. And Ye makes it a point to like really tell us with the music that this character is back in the club. He even says it with the lyrics that he's back in the club. And I think that's what he's doing here. He's telling us his character is back in church, and he's just giving us testimony of everything that happened throughout the album.
All right. No, that's all really interesting analysis. So as a professional philosopher, right, I like to have people define things, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for me to get really what's going on without kind of clear definitions, right?
That sucks for you because I'm a Conti. I'm kidding.
So in the song Jail, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about having priors and then getting arrested. I'm assuming, is he talking about 3 strike laws? And then like the idea of God posting his bail tonight, does that actually mean something? Is this actually doing some sort of theological or moral or emotional work, or is this just kind of like a catchy phrase that sounds nice with the background?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think there's a high chance that it is referencing three strikes. It wouldn't be the first time. I know he does it in Yeezus. He even did it as recent as Jesus is King in
He
Hands
does.
On 13th Amendment, three strikes. Turn to left when I should have made a right or something like that. So he's been outspoken to that a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if in jail he's using that as a way to communicate spiritual
Because that
truth.
means he's going to go to jail for basically like, indefinitely, right? He's not going to get out soon. So
Exactly.
God is going to be if he's going to be able to post his bail after three strikes, that's something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the other reason why I think that's exactly what he's talking about is because of Jay-Z's verse too, right? Like Hov starts off in like his character is in a jail cell, and he's talking about telling his wife to send him his mail, and he's talking to Beyonce, and so like his character is locked away, and so they are painting this picture of using the natural to help us understand the spiritual. And I think the spiritual aspect of it is and again, I think Ye's telling three stories here, which isn't uncommon for a Ye song. I think he is literally speaking of like the three strikes law. And he's also speaking of how he's treated and in the culture, in the media, right? And Jay-Z even kind of mentions this too. And so he's speaking of how the media treats him, how they constantly figuratively put him in jail because of things he's done in the past, like the Taylor Swift incident and all that. And I think he's also speaking of spiritual truths too. That is to say, God's going to vindicate him in the natural sense, right? And he's going to be vindicated in the long run. And he's said this in a lot of interviews where, what he says right now won't make sense, but it'll make sense in a few years. So I think he really thinks that he's going to be vindicated by the media at some point, maybe when he dies or 100 years from now. But I also think he's speaking of it in the spiritual sense, where he's made a lot of spiritual mistakes, and he's going to make a lot of spiritual mistakes in the album. But at the end of the day, God is going to post his bail. God is going to take him from that, whether it be of him speaking of salvation or him just speaking of just God helping him through the trials. But he's speaking that God will take him from that. And I think that's what we see in Come to Life. It's like the culmination of what he was expecting God to do. He does it in Come to Life.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, especially, just thinking about it as, indefinite prison term, right? Because it's three strikes, and the idea that somehow God can save you from that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's powerful. Also, what I think is powerful is remote control.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so I think that's like a really underrated, theologically speaking, song. What are your thoughts on that song?
I think he's a Calvinist. I think the song is promoting divine. What's it called? I can't even think of the phrase right now because I was trying to think of a joke.
Divine determinism.
Exactly. Yeah, he's definitely a song about compatibilism. There's a there's an Oliver Crisp feature in there too. No, yeah, I think it's Ye realizing that he needs to I'm going to say this term just because I think it's so cringe, but I want to make
let go and let God.
No, he needs to let Jesus take the wheel.
Okay.
Because he was in his hovercraft, so he needs to become the co-pilot. No, yeah, I'm actually curious on your thoughts and your insights on the song, because I would admit it probably is underrated. It's probably one of my least favorite songs sonically. So it's the one that I least find myself going back to. But the first time I heard it and I think it was the listening party too, I was able to see some of the theological aspects of it, of God being in control. Like he's a CEO,
right.
He has the final say in things, and how Ye's putting his trust that all things at the end will work together for his good.
And he even talks about getting new clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jesus giving him new clothes. Like it seems like he's going his own way, but then Jesus sort of intervenes and gives him his righteousness, gives him his love, gives him a relationship, and now he's relying on Christ rather than himself. Anyway, that's how I interpreted the song.
No, that's how I interpreted it as well when I first heard it too. Yeah. So I definitely had the same exact interpretation, which is neat that we can actually get that from remote control, because I'm sure a lot of his other fans wouldn't understand that, because they don't understand a lot of the theological truths that are in the Christian faith. I know, like Anthony Fantano, when he and Sean C. These are two big like YouTube music critics and reviewers. And I remember when they were reviewing Jesus is King, like just so much of like the theological richness was just going over their head. And I was like, oh, come on. Like they're just giving like the worst takes on, and they're usually great reviewers, but it just comes to show how you really have to be in a specific place to appreciate some of what Ye's doing in Jesus is
Right.
King and Donda. But yeah, that aspect of it in remote control would definitely be would be one of them, because I remember a lot of people thought the hook was corny. You got remote control, the auto tune there and everything.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. So like I've been through a lot like this last year or two, in
Mhm.
reference to even just figuring out. So I'm a professor at the University of St. Joseph in Macau, and trying to get back over here if I'm going to be able to get back over here, and just some health issues, and like there was been definitely some times where I've been playing that song over and over again, just as a reminder, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not the CEO. God's got it under control.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's crazy because um I've been a Kanye fan way before he was ever a Christian. I've been a hardcore Kanye stan before he was a Christian. And I remember when I was seeing him, when I saw him in Coachella in 2019, was when I was like, whoa, is he actually a Christian? Like, they're saying Jesus, the name of Jesus, and they're praying in this Coachella, and Ye was on the microphone saying, "We're gonna say Jesus. We don't care if you guys try to cancel us." I was like, whoa, this is refreshing. And I never thought that that a Kanye track would minister my life. So like the way remote control has ministered yours. Like for me, it was God is from Jesus is King. And in 2019, I went through a very like dark mental health season, and I remember being in bed with my wife and both of us just singing through the song God is, and just sobbing to it, because like of like what he's saying, and I was blessed by it. I was jealous as well. Like, I wish I could have that first love, like that zeal he has, the level that he's unashamed, and this is how to just tell everyone about Jesus. Like, it just, you know, I want that. I really want that, and that was like a catalyst that Christ used to kind of lure me back in 2019, because I wasn't on the best path, and also help me through the mental health challenges that I was experiencing back then. So he's definitely been a gift to the church, despite his imperfections.
yeah, no. What would you say is the overall kind of like theological message you read into Donda? Maybe it's not explicit, maybe it's more implicit, but kind of, you know, theology according to Donda. What do you got for me?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. By the way, if you hear my daughter crying in the background,
I do
um,
not.
okay. It's closer to nap time. She gets a little whiny then. Um, yeah, no, I think like there's a lot of redemption, like undertones in it for sure. Um, there's a lot of sense of, I am imperfect. I am still struggling with the flesh, for lack of a better term. But at the end of the day, God got me. I'm going through this divorce. I'm still struggling with
Right.
with the fact that I lost my mother, 12 years ago at this point, maybe more. And just him. Yeah, I think his theology is one where he just has a lot of just trust that God's in control of his life, and that he just has to trust and lean on God. Um,
It kind of reminds
yeah.
me of the sort of Augustinian interpretation of Romans 7, right? Where it's kind of like the inward flesh fighting, this spirit fighting the flesh and having turmoil. And at the very end, he's just like, who's going to save me from this, right? And it's Jesus, right?
Yeah, man.
That's kind of the vibe I got from
that's awesome you mentioned that, because I remember thinking of Romans 7. I was thinking there's no way Ye read through Romans 7, Romans 8 to read this album. But I mean, you never know. He was halfway through Ephesians, so that means he read Romans already. But nah, I actually was thinking of the same thing, and like I was thinking of how like Come to Life and No Child Left Behind is like the first verse of Romans 8, where he's like, oh man, I've been having this inward battle, but then like these last two songs, it's like, but there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ.
right.
But yeah, no, that it's really neat that you mentioned that, because that was actually a Bible chapter that was going through my head. Of next time I'm doing some street preaching, which I never do.
You should.
The next
you
time,
should.
I should. I haven't done it since like 2016. But next time, I'm gonna use that as a picture of Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, our brother is struggling, is going through a lot, right? Kanye is going through a lot, and I know I've been praying for him, and I hope everyone listening to this does as well. But I did think he kind of crossed the line. Not kind of, he did cross the line with, he was on a game feature, or he featured on a game track, right? And said something like, God save me from that crash so I could beat Pete Davidson's ass, right? Something like that. And then the music video, right, where he's burying Pete Davidson alive. What's your take on this?
I think he's gonna regret that, man. Like his kids are someday gonna see that if they don't get back together and Kim does stay with Pete, that's gonna be hard for his kids to watch, especially if they end up liking Pete as a stepfather. So I think there's an aspect where he can regret it from that aspect.
Do you think he knew that it's like it's unchristlike? Like, do you think he knows that this doesn't correlate with the Sermon on the Mount?
Yeah, 100%. He says he even says something in the song that alludes to that. He says something along the lines of, "But today I'm gonna let my pride win." Man, I wish I should have had those lyrics pulled up. But he says something in the song right before he gets to talking about Pete and all that. He does says God, gotta let God in, but tonight I'm gonna let my pride win. So I think he knows he's not right. He even said it in the Drink Champs interview. He says I know I'm not right, and I think he even asked for prayers in that interview. He says so pray for me, and then he goes on into all those sound bites we saw on social media of him just lashing out on cancel culture and everything.
Right.
But he says that there too. He says it in the game song, and not that it makes his actions right, but there is a sense that he's
struggling.
Aware. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
He knows it's wrong and he's struggling and he needs help. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. And I can't imagine what it must feel like to see, your wife with her other man, like in public like that. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to be a celebrity and just be exposed like that.
And having kids involved and that, like,
and and also having the media attack you and it's
So what are your predictions for Donda 2? It's kind of released, or a couple songs maybe have released. If you can afford it. Are we gonna get
$200?
Are we gonna get you think we're gonna get more Donda Kanye, or are you predicting something else? And also, do you predict that we will get Donda 2?
I don't know what man, because like I know he said The Life of Pablo was only going to be on Tidal, but then he dropped it everywhere else. So maybe he does the same with Donda too. Maybe he drops it everywhere else and not just on STEM, because it's supposedly finished, right? He dropped it on the STEM player. As far as like the themes, are we going to get more of Donda? Donda 2 is a lot different than Donda 1. Donda 2 feels a lot more like 808s and Heartbreak. A lot of the songs are like, hey, my relationship with my wife is over. There are very little religious undertones in there. Um, it's a lot more of 808s and heartbreak, yay. There's just one song where he literally says, I need you to love me. I need you to love me. I need you to love me. Like, it's just him repeating that in the chorus, with a lot of auto tune. There's another song where it's like angry gay, where he's saying like your security is gonna need security for this, where he's like almost threatening Kim's security, or Pete's security. I don't know. Um, I think it's Kim's security, because he makes a reference in that song of him going to his daughter's birthday and they like frisked him down and everything, and they didn't want him to go in. So yeah, Donda 2 does seem like a departure from Jesus is King in Donda 1, at least from a Christian standpoint. Um, so yeah, I have a lot of, I don't know if faith is the right word. Um, Not according to Richard Swinburne, it wouldn't. But I have a lot of faith that that we're gonna see Jesus is King, yay, again, and Donda 1, yay, again. I really do think that this is just him going through a rough patch, but he does seem to be a man of of conviction. Um, and I do think he really had a spiritual experience or spiritual awakening back in 2019, especially if you watch that interview with Pastor Adam Tyson on Apologia Radio, which is a horrible YouTube channel, by the way. But the interview is just fantastic. Um, and you could see the pastor tell you about his conversion experience, and it's just one of those things where you're like, yeah, I mean, it's very unlikely that he hasn't truly been, indwelled by the Holy Ghost. And so I think that we are going to get more of the Donda, the Jesus King, yay, the gospel, yay. We may go through like a year or 2 years where it's like this yay working through this divorce, because it hasn't even started trial. Like, Kim barely just got declared legally single. Yeah, so I mean, I hope it isn't the case, but I feel like we're gonna get a lot more drama, yay, a lot more of these Instagram posts, yay. Um, you know, but yeah,
Yeah,
just gonna
because
keep
so
praying
like
for him.
I'm seeing this and hearing the violence with the game reference and
Mhm.
on the game track, and unjustified violence, right? Like, so violence
Mhm.
not in reference to like protecting you and your family
Mhm.
or your country from
Yeah,
an
yeah.
invasion, right? It's the Antichrist, and it's the opposite of Christ, right? I guess that's what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just like so sad to kind of see him go that route and see uh, him um, just kind of moving away from what looked like pure joy in
Yeah,
2019, right? Pure
yeah,
joy,
yeah. Mhm.
and it seemed like he had Christ on his mind, 24/7,
Yeah.
right? I still think he's absolutely right, that uh, he's in 2019 he said something like he's not a rapper that's a Christian, he's a Christian rapper. Like, everything
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Christian for him. Like,
Yeah,
he
like he was
baptized
punching the air.
everything,
Yeah.
and which makes a lot of Christian rappers, look bad, I think. But
Yeah. Oh
uh,
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, he
but
made
I
a
mean, I
lot
think
of them look bad in 2019.
I
Yeah.
think that's the approach, right? Christ is all and everything, and I really hope that Kanye comes back to the faith. So I'm gonna hold on to your prediction, and besides praying for him,
Yeah.
any other thoughts on Kanye, Donda? I know you also you make your own music.
Mhm.
If you want to give us a sample about what you've been up to.
Yeah, man. I've been well, just to go back on like the Connie stuff. What you mentioned when you said like 2019 gay was like happier. It's like you see God's grace just shining on his face. And it's crazy because I'm in a Facebook group with, I think there's either like 20,000 people or 120,000 people. It's called Kanye Yay Posting. It's just like a Facebook fan group. And you'll notice a lot of people there. Most of them aren't Christian. Most of them are like atheists. Actually, you'll see a lot of debates on whether God exists on that group, which is just, it's just crazy to see the bad arguments. I literally, I never engage, but one common theme is that you'll notice a lot of people will say, "I miss 2019 happy yay."
Mm.
Like that's it's a common theme. Where like
Yeah.
even non-believers are able to see that there was definitely something different about Ye. And it used to be where people used to say, "Oh, I miss this. I miss seeing the 2007 Ye where he was happy when he had his mom, or 2006." But now, like the new happy Ye is the
Mm.
2019 Ye. So yeah, so that's something that a lot of people were able to see, where he was just like carefree. He had joy, and hopefully our brother is able to lean on that joy, even in the midst of sorrow, which is what Paul says. To rejoice in sorrow, and hopefully he can he can find that again. Um, as far as my music, yeah, I hope I could release something soon. I've been trying to build a studio forever, but I think I'm finally going to be able to finish it with the tax returns,
Very nice.
yeah. But yeah, I've been working on a project for myself, one that is as a Christian rapper, not a rapper that happens to be Christian. Yeah, with featuring Bishop Barron and
Ah,
a,
nice,
a
nice.
sample. No, yeah, so I've been working on that for a while now. It's really just a matter. The concept is done, like the story that I'm telling is done, the song order is done, the production is basically done. I just haven't done my vocals or mixed it because I want to have that environment to do it in, so it can sound as good as possible. And I'm also working on which is a project I started about a month ago, on a CCM worship album. I
Mm.
I really like what like Elevation is doing, not in their theology, but like musically, and
Yeah.
I like some of Hillsong's, which is hard to believe. I like some of their new stuff. So I've just really been
Not their pastors, though, I imagine.
Oh no, that's right. I shouldn't have said that because they have that documentary that just came out. Oh, that's brutal. That was horrible.
It's
We're gonna
okay.
keep that though because I'm
It's
human.
it's okay because we all know that eventually you will seek communion with Rome, and we look forward to that day.
Yeah,
But
I'll have
thanks
a
very
handful of
much,
pints
man.
with Aquinas soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate
Yeah, man.
all the insights and appreciate talking and chopping it up about Donda.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. You have a good one, and I can't wait to see you become a Protestant.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, man. You too. Take care.